Welcome to the Manifestation Lab. This is your host, Kelly Howe. From the grounded science to the mystical and unseen, we're investigating this big experiment we call life and finding what really works when it comes to manifesting a life that sets your heart and your soul on fire. Welcome to the lab. All right, guys, I'm having some serious Mercury retrograde vibes happening with my technology, and I've had to record this introduction a bazillion times. So hopefully I'm going to get my shit together and get right this time. I want to welcome you back to the Manny Lab pod. Today, I have Chantelle Renee with me. Chantelle is the author of the best-selling book, Aligning with the Divine. She is a hypnotherapist. She's an Ascension guide, a healer in all manners of the word. She is a bright, shining light in this world. And today, we really get into talking about what an empath is, or perhaps a highly sensitive person. Now, you may or may not be familiar with that term. We go deep into what it means to be an empath, what the need is for enlightened boundaries and learning how to work with these energies, set boundaries so that being an empath or a highly sensitive person doesn't turn out to be a curse, and we can actually harness the power and the gift of having such a profound sensitivity. Now, I totally identify with this gift. At times, it is a complete pain in the ass, and I've really had to learn to really work with my own energies, heal deep old traumas, release old energies that I've absorbed consciously and unconsciously. And truly now I can say that it is an enormous gift. It can be a lot to work with, and I think if you identify with this, you're really going to enjoy our conversation. We also get into all kinds of topics on consciousness, creating matter with our minds, some studies that have been done with Masaru Emoto on water, and some grounding studies, and we just have a lot of fun talking. Chantelle is also the third member, not third, but she's the final member of the Energy Enlightenment Tour. This is an event that I do with Chantelle, Brittany Buckwalter, and myself, and we do a full day and sometimes 2 days of coming together, doing everything we can to raise our vibration, talk about consciousness, shift limiting beliefs, and truly help the participants harness the power of their inner self and their higher self so that we can manifest a better world together. It's a fun event. We are looking at trying to plan one for perhaps the fall. So if that sounds interesting to you, maybe keep an eye on my Instagram. And we actually have an Energy Enlightenment Tour Instagram. Haven't really done much with it, but I'm looking to get that more active here in the future. So here's my conversation with Chantelle. I hope you enjoy. I went into like mad scientist mode this morning, and I was like, do you ever do that where you like, I lost track of all time, and I was like writing ideas and looking things up, and and then I got in the shower, and I don't know how long I was in there because I don't know. I lost like 40 minutes in that shower somehow.
That's good. That means you're not like living in a stressful situation. You're free flowing.
Yeah. So, but I totally lost track of time. And actually, I was going to ask you because like going into the eclipse and the full moon, I felt fine. But I will say like the days after, I have felt kind of off and like not grounded in my body and wobbly and, just kind of like oddly emotional, but I can't figure out what it is. Are you feeling any of that?
Well, I just got off of a cold that came out of nowhere. And I lost my voice. So it was kind of like the universe was like, okay, stop working for a week.
Yes.
And I hate rescheduling, or I shouldn't say hate, but it's like, I don't want to do that. People are excited. But when I can't talk, it's like, nope, you have to say no. So that's an empath boundary.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because I know you and I are both so passionate about the concept of empaths. And I feel like there's so many empaths walking around that have no idea, that they're feeling and sensing things so deeply and profoundly. So maybe we could start there, and you could just talk about like, what is an empath? And we'll just kind of start there.
Well, from my understanding, an empath is actually a large base of my clients, honestly, because they usually will come to me overwhelmed, emotionally exhausted, have anxiety. So an empath has a very sensitive layer to the aura, the emotional body. We all have it, but some are very more attuned and can feel energies around them, and they'll pull that energy into their own auric fields unconsciously most of the time. And that's where the problem comes in, is when you're, I would say, a disempowered empath versus an empowered empath. You kind of soak in your environment instead of radiating out into it. And so an empath is just a very intuitive person that senses, feels, and often deeply can feel the deepest traumas of somebody. And then they can get confused if that's me or what is that? Where is it coming from? And so the way I see empaths when they come to me is if they're, I would say, like a sick empath or an overloaded empathic person, their aura will be very small and spongy. And they kind of sit like this, and, there's no power there. It's because it's all depleted. And so an empath, I think it's actually a gift. A lot of them will feel it's a curse because you can find yourself curled up in a fetal position, crying for no reason and not really understand what's going on.
Yes. So it's somebody who's like just feeling and sensing the environment just at a really heightened level. And I like that you break this up into like a disempowered empath versus an empowered empath. I feel like that was how I was walking around for, the first half of my life, was not having any idea that I was like feeling and sensing so much. And then so I would just kind of like pull my energy in, I guess, trying to protect myself, and just had no idea what was going on, working in a hospital, like just absorbing all those energies. And so you said something important though, and that was that we actually draw it to us. Maybe talk a little bit more about that.
I feel like a lot of empathic people have a gift, and what I feel like our purpose here on life, on Earth in our lifetime, is to really get in tune and to tap in what our gifts are, and bring that into the world and help uplift other people. So I would say almost 100% of every person I've ever worked with that was an intuitive, empathic person has this deep desire to serve on a greater level. They have the ability to love a little more unconditionally than the average person. And so that is a beautiful gift, but it also can, if they don't know what's going on, it can be kind of troublesome. So and empower.
I think what I would do is literally, like, because I had such a desire to make someone feel better, I was unconsciously like, I'll take that heavy energy for you, and I had no idea I was doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. I mean, my whole first part of my life, same thing. I would just know things about people. I didn't understand how I knew. I would feel like I'd walk on eggshells around certain people and all of that kind of thing. But the really cool thing is when you kind of have, when an empath comes into their power, it's not ego power. It's just a different kind of ability and a different kind of a gift. Once you kind of realize and you have an understanding of emotional intelligence, which is lacking in our society completely, understanding that they're supposed to be flowing and emotions are in motion, and that very well, and tapping's profound for that as well. But it is like people will get so in suffering, will be suffering in these feelings and not know how to move through them. And that makes you a sick empath. But what's cool is when you clear out your house, take your power back, and you start really taking accountability for where the drains are, where the leaks, where are you leaking light? We're all connected. There's light between me and you. There's light between everybody. And so empaths, like you said, you just tend to pull in everybody else's more shadowy stuff.
I'll take that. I'll carry that for you. Sure. I'm strong enough. I can do that.
Yeah. And it's like, it starts off kind of in an innocent way of like, I'll just want to help. But then it's like, we have to realize that we're not here to take on anybody else's stuff. Everybody's here to do their own inner journey, so then it kind of, the ego of the empath kind of gets inflated. Like, I'm here just to heal everybody.
Right.
But, so ultimately we just want to be radiating out, knowing who we are at a spiritual level. And then the awareness shifts. Then you're aware of what you're doing.
Yeah, I see that so much too. I mean, I know I've been there, just that it's part of the shadow, I think, of that healer calling, is to kind of have to work through the ego side of that, of like, maybe I am a really good healer, but I'm still also just a normal person, and my healing powers don't come from my ego. They come from somewhere else, right? I know I had to go through that. So let's talk a little bit about so you mentioned something and empaths leaking light and healers leaking light. So talk to me a little bit more. I think you've already talked about it, but give me some more details on how that might show up, or somebody might know that they're leaking light.
Okay. Well, I mean, and basically everybody who isn't even a super sensitive is leaking light on some levels somewhere. And so what I mean by that is like we make agreements with our energy all day, every day, constantly. So it's like, let's take inventory. Who do I feel drained around? You know who that is. You know, when you walk in and you're just like, oh, you just instantly feel yourself pulling back. Have awareness of that, and start taking inventory of who you feel uplifted around and who you, without judgment, but just starting to gauge how you feel around different kinds of people. That'll help you kind of come into an awareness of the energy, the magnetism between certain people. And so, like, say, for example, if this is something small, but these little small things add up huge. So if I say, I have a friend that wants to have lunch with me, but my schedule is so busy. And I say, yeah, let's have lunch. I can't wait. But inside, I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. I am too busy. I love them. I love her. I just don't really want to do it, but I do it to appease them, or I feel like I'm doing it, when they'd probably be totally fine if I said, let's just schedule in a month. But do you see what we do? We do these little things, and that's a contract that's out there, and that's pulling on our minds, our consciousness, and our energy. And then it's draining because you're already daunting it when you did it, and so it just builds. So that's one form. Also, toxic relationships with, close family members, even work environments, things like that.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a reckoning that happens when you really start paying attention to that. And I don't know if you see this, but I see a lot of healer empaths, intuitives, when they're really getting clear and owning the reality of their experience, there's a lot of guilt and almost shame around recognizing, like, I have to say no to this person because I recognize that when I'm around them, I'm so drained. Or I'm not going to say no to that lunch date because I feel bad. I need to do that for them. So it's like, that's part of it, is working through the guilt and even like a deeper shame, that when we start to set those, what I call enlightened boundaries, which I think is what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. And empaths are generally people pleasers. Yes, yes, yes. Because they don't want to feel they don't want the confrontation. They don't want the negative feelings because they're already dealing with so much of it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because exactly what happens, right? It's like we say, okay, so we do say no, and maybe somebody is disappointed, or maybe they're pissed off, or, X, Y, and Z. And then we say no, and then we are dealing with our own guilt about it if we don't work through that. And then we also can feel their disappointment and their anger. And we're like, that's kind of how we're micromanaging the situation, is like, I'm just going to make them happy so I don't have to feel that discomfort.
Oh, yeah. And that's totally unhealthy habit to do. And
Totally.
it's natural. I mean, I think that's what we just, because nobody really taught us how to do this.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that blew my mind. I can't even remember I'm so glad you brought that up. But I remember the first time somebody, like, I read it or heard somebody say it, and I was like, wait, what? I'm having a hard time saying no because I don't want to feel their disappointment and their anger or their whatever. And I was like, oh, shit. It was just like mind blown. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about energy vampires.
Okay. Well, so energy vampires, again, so here's the bottom line. As an empathic person, or just a regular person, a human being with just all different kinds of abilities, is we first have to just take full ownership, full responsibility for the energy that we give and as well as we receive. Otherwise, we're operating in victim energy, victim mentality, and that's not going to serve anybody ultimately.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Well, just about energy vampires, because I know we both talk about that when empaths don't have those strong boundaries, how these energy vampires can show up and just like intentionally, or I guess not intentionally, drain us. But yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yes, so they do it unconsciously and consciously, but again, as an empath, we have to realize that we're letting them do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the term vampire is like, oh, they're just taking it from me. And then we're in the victim role again. But yes, so sometimes it's like your own family and they are just operating in a place of not full empowerment, I would say. So sometimes people will just take advantage of people who are nice, and so that's a form of energy vampirism. or just also being in a toxic environment where you're around a lot of negative people. But I would say, as far as humans being energy vampires, most of the time that's unconscious, or they're operating in a very low, slow frequency, and they're trying to pull anything they can from anybody and anywhere. Now, in the unseen spirit realm, there's a whole different kind of parasitic entities and energies that would be more like an actual vampire, I would say. But
is it safe to say that those enlightened boundaries and learning to hold our field protect us from both, though?
Oh, yes. We always have the power. It's a matter of recognizing it, embodying it, and owning it, and being okay that not every day you're going to be able to walk around like with a big golden ball of light, but just having the awareness of when your light's getting a little dim, okay, it's time to do something. Right.
Yeah, I just went through that recently where I was like, I went through a long span of time where I was just like walking on water, like felt so amazing and so empowered and just light as a feather. And then it was like, all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I got to slow down. I am absorbing a lot and taking a lot in and not protecting myself. And I know you and I have talked about that, how sometimes we can just forget, like we just forget and fall back into old patterns. And suddenly it's like, oh yeah, sure. Okay. I'll absorb that energy. And I think when I get weakened, it just happens more easily. And I just kind of forgot to protect myself there for a while.
It does happen. I mean, and especially we both work with clients too. And so with tapping, especially with what you do, I mean, they're tapping out their energy out of their nervous system right in your energetic field. So, being really mindful of that energetic debris kind of coming out too.
Did you have to go through a learning curve with that? Because I know I did. And I went a long time not realizing how much I was taking and absorbing and carrying out of that room after those sessions. Yeah,
for me, definitely. In the beginning of when I would start working with people, I would feel, because, people have been through some horrific things. And so when you are having them talk about that, their emotions are surfacing. And so you can it's palpable, you can feel it. And so you're helping them to move through it. But at the same time, you're kind of experiencing it with them. So it took a little bit of practice with that. And it always helps me to just realize that everything is a soul lesson, even as horrible as it is. And that we're all in this together, even maybe we don't realize the actual interconnection of the good, the bad, and which is the illusion of duality. So that helps me to pull away from those deep, dark things that are hard to believe people have been through.
Yeah. So if somebody comes to your office and they're very obviously an empath, like you said, most of them, probably all of them are on some level, and they come in and you can tell that they are that kind of spongy, shrunken field. Where do you start with? Maybe like what's an exercise that you give them to help start rebuilding that?
Anytime I work with anybody, we do a consultation. I'm basically educating them on energy awareness, because a lot of people they know that things are energy, but they don't realize that we are actually biophotons. We glow in the dark. Everything is literally energy. And so I'll show them a picture of an aura. I have like slides. I should have showed them. They're in my book too, but I'll show them a picture of the aura, the layers of the aura, and it helped them to see that this is where your aura's tore. It's really sponging. This is where you're pulling it in. And also through the solar plexus is a huge empathic center. I mean, I carry more weight around my stomach too, which is, I think a lot of empaths have that issue. Not everybody, but
as another layer of energetic protection, you think?
When I was like in a meditation, I just kind of got that visual. That's why, it's kind of there. I don't need that protection, but I think it's on a subconscious level. Maybe I need to tap on that.
Maybe so. No, I have heard that before though. And certainly I see that with people that are, just working on weight in general, that there is this protective layer that our subconscious can, lay down to protect us from those toxic energies and just help us survive,
So I'll show my clients the picture of aura so they can lock on to, okay, this is the light body. This is measurable. This is science. I like to always work with science because that helps the right brain and the left brain for their transformation. And so when they see that, this is the aura and yours kind of can go out and feel, and you can feel it in your stomach. It's like that gut feeling, when you say, I have that gut feeling, it's because you're feeling it literally right here. Or you just have this feeling about this person. And most people say it's right here in your stomach. or your throat. A lot of empaths have throat issues.
Yes, mine goes, I feel it both places, but the more I clear my energetic field, I still feel it a lot in my throat and less in my stomach, I would say.
Yeah. And then one other thing, I know you love this study too, is I always show any client actually the Dr. Emoto water study, because that is so important. That should be in mainstream school.
Maybe just for our listeners, maybe talk about that a little bit. And I do love that. And for anybody listening, you'll want to go look up Dr. Emoto's work and watch those videos because they are fucking incredible.
No, they really are. It really is kind of helping us to usher in the age of, what we would say enlightenment or advanced sciences, because it really gives us proof of mind over matter. So ultimately, Dr. Emoto did a wonderful and really, I feel, conscious shifting study where he had he did about I think 12 is when he started. He had 12 vials of water that he had in his laboratory, and he wrote different words on each of the vials. And so, for example, one would say war, one would say love, one would say peace, one would say I hate you, heavy metal music, and so on. And so we would have people come in and they would say the word, they'd think about it, they'd raise that emotion as they're looking at the water. And so what he did was he took a picture of the water before he did the study and showed the water molecules. And then he took a picture or he went under the microscope after, and you could see the amazing crystallization of the differences of the water. So the heavy metal or I hate you or the war one, the water was all in chaos and not in harmony at all. And so the thank you and the gratitude were perfect snowflake crystallized forms. And so right there is proof of mind over matter. We're 70% water roughly.
Right.
So what you think about, you're really bringing about. And so I always, have that talk with them, because now you're really empowered. This is a real study. And what your thoughts are, we live in a mental universe. What we think about is a part of it creates. So
it does.
I love to share that too.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a real visible example of how consciousness is changing matter right in front of our very eyes. It is fascinating. So I would love for people to go look that up. Yeah. And I just love to say his name, Dr. Masaru Emoto.
Oh, you say it better than I do. Yes, I say Emoto.
It's because I love to say it. So we'll walk around Masaru Emoto. I like it. But
yeah, he's a sweet, precious man. He let me actually put a study in my book. So that was really exciting.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah. But, so you mentioned science. And I think when you and I met, I think we connected instantly on those 2 points. Yes. Number one, that we are both obsessed and fascinated with bringing science and spirituality together, and that it is connected. It's not separate. And then the other major thing I think that you and I, when we started talking, that we connected on was this idea and this fact that spirituality is bigger than any one religion, and it can be all inclusive. And I just wanted to bring in your book because you start the book off with a statement that says, "Welcome all souls of all faiths." And I just can't, just saying those words, it just feels so enveloping. And I can't think of a better way to start a book and invite people into a spiritual journey than saying, I don't care what faith you are. We're going to talk about spirituality from a space that we can all connect. And that's with love, So talk to me about the title, Aligning with the Divine, and how you came, not just to the title, but how was the book born? What was happening in your life when that happened?
Well, first and foremost, I never thought in a million years I'd write a book ever. I can barely spell, honestly, and I have a little bit of dyslexia. A little bit. So I, as a child, I always had the direct connection to Creator, Source, God. And whenever I would go to a church or religion, I felt like the religion was trying to and indoctrinate me into fear, and the God and the energy that I know is not like that at all. And so I kind of just steered myself. I wasn't raised with religion or spirituality. When I went with my friends to their churches, I just felt completely it didn't feel good to me. I felt better just being alone with my own connection. So I just continued to journey on. And so I had been awakening and expanding, and I was an empathic person. So I had sensed things. I didn't really put too much together with that. And so about 2015, we moved to Louisiana from a place I lived for a very long time. And in that process, I just started, it was the first time actually my daughter went to school. So it was the first time I was in my house alone with no sound, no TV, nothing. And so that's when the download started. it was just like this profound stuff that was like felt resonant with like, I mean, it's everything I wasn't taught in school or religion. It was just very affirming.
Yeah. Were you living a spiritual life? You know what I mean? I mean, you are deeply embedded in that world now. Were you kind of already living that, or was this kind of out of the blue? It sounds like you already had some of it, but
yeah, no, I never thought I would be working with clients and having a private practice and this at all. No, I actually had a whole different product line in the tanning industry that I had just launched and developed and had got it into a big distributor. And so I was in the process of just taking these notes of this stuff. And I was like, this is really good. This would just make people feel what I've always felt. But it's not from me. It's from, a higher realm coming through me. And so I started to write this, but at the same time, I'm working on this product line I developed. And so my ego is very much attached to this because I'm like a stay-at-home mom, but I just created this awesome product.
Working your ass off to create this huge product.
Yeah, I mean, like every detail of it. And so it was a lot of energy I put into that. And so I was going back and forth with this book, and I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do with all this? So I started to like break it off into chapters, and I'm writing, and then we go through a flood. So a natural disaster in 2016, we had a river basically that came through our house, destroyed everything, and took the inventory of my business that I had been working with.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, okay, I'm kind of over that product line at this point. But when I left for the flood, it was just about getting my kids out, the dogs, the cats. And the only thing I took was my manuscript when we barely got out. So we're climbing out windows. That's literally the only thing I grabbed. I left with no sandals. But I got that. And so during that process, I was really put into the place to practice everything I wrote, like from natural law to literally every single chapter that I had already written. I was called to practice it and to really embody it and to see the after effects of actually practicing it through complete devastation and loss. We didn't have insurance or anything, did it? So it was just $250,000, your whole house gutted, gone. And so long story short, that's really how I got initiated. So I wrote my book before I started working with people.
I don't think I realized that. I knew that the flood was in that time period, but I think I thought that the book came after the flood. That's fascinating.
Well, it was the book got published after because it was like a rebuilding of the house and we moved and things like that. But yeah, the manuscript was a rough form, but that's all I took.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But how interesting that you had worked so hard on this product line. I mean, did you feel like that was a coincidence that this flood came through and destroyed everything you've been working on?
No, I've been feeling like my guides, my higher self, the angels that work with me, I was feeling like it was like I need to get on my path. And that was not my path, I think. And I'm so glad that happened because what I do now is so far more rewarding than a product line that I could make a lot of money at,
I think that can be one of the hardest things is to look at one of those devastating moments like that. But when I look back at my life in the exact same way, it's like every single time something fell apart, it was just making space for something new to bloom. Yeah.
Yep. It's just the natural law of like just not being attached. And like this, I realized I really wasn't attached to materialistic items. And, you see people walking out with their shoes on their, like their high heels or expensive shoes, taking that, to safe high land. And I didn't care about any of that stuff. So it really kind of also it made me realize I really am not attached to the materialistic things.
Oh my gosh.
Just your family and making sure you're safe. And
Yeah. So that clearly launched you on a whole different trajectory because you were working on a line of, you said tanning products, right?
Yeah.
Like stickies and
the UV protection collection. And it was a really great product, but I'm totally over that now. But yeah, my ego was attached to it for sure.
Oh, I can imagine there was a grieving process with just all the time and energy that went into it. And then it's just gone.
Yeah. And I just when that flood happened, I'm just like, okay, I surrender. And then everything just started to escalate really fast.
Oh my gosh. So when did you start, talk to me about the hypnotherapy side of things and let's just go into, you've done these, you've learned these modalities, you've learned these healing techniques, and now you're working with clients. So what does a session look like with you combining all of these things?
My goal is to get them into their own power as fast as possible with the least amount of sessions. And so that can, that can look like, and ultimately when you work with the higher realms, it's super fast and it's amazing. And as far as hypnosis, the reason I really went into that route is it's just such a profound way to create rapid change, like just super fast. And you don't have to sit and talk about it for 30 years to get the healing that you really need. And it allows me to help people really use all of the modalities in the book, Aligning with the Divine, like emotional intelligence, self-love, intuition, all of that encompasses into a session within hypnosis. So it helps to plant those seeds fast.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you had any profound, I mean, I'm sure you have doing hypnosis, but on your personal journey, have you had any profound shifts happen that you could talk about?
Sure. So before I, went, through the process of getting certified and everything to be a hypnotherapist, I actually, when I wrote my book, I published it. And when I would go to share and talk about it, my throat would just shut down. It'd be like, I felt like people were going to judge me. They were going to think that, it's new ager. And I'm like, it's not like that. It's just, and so in my heart, I felt like it's a beautiful guide but I couldn't talk about it. So I felt like I need to go do a past life regression, never heard of it before. And so I went and did that. And in the regression, I was guided back. And then I looked down and I realized that I'm in like the Egyptian side of the world. And then the therapist guides me through the process. And so I realized I was in Damascus and I was a scribe in this lifetime. And even if you don't believe in past lives, your subconscious mind, your soul, the higher realms will show you what you need to do to kind of grip on.
Yeah.
And so I see that I'm here and I'm going around. It's a miserable life. My husband is like, just like I'm not in love. It's like forced arranged marriage and stuff. And so I'm going around to all of these cities around my tribal area, and I'm collecting these wisdom teachings, and they're so profound, and I'm so excited, and I bring them back to these people who would be in power, I guess you could say. And I'm like, look, I've got all of this wisdom. Let's share it with the people. And I'm a scribe. That's what I'm here to do. And so long story short, they ended up taking out all the empowering, very important knowledge and creating fear around it so that there was a middleman. And it was really a mirror of what I had felt in my early life with religion. And so I had stood up to them and I said, this isn't right. And I was basically poisoned. And so and then as soon as I had that awareness in my consciousness, that charge left, and I have no issue speaking about it anymore.
Oh my gosh. So there's two things I want to say. Number one, I had almost an identical past life regression. I don't know if we've ever talked about that, but same, like I was some sort of scribe and wanting to convey some message. And I was ultimately killed because I wanted to get some message out and I was being told no. But B, I have done so many past life regressions where it's like I get a huge release, but man, my throat chakra must be really effed up because it didn't just like leave for me. I go through like layers of it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so much better. But I've had to do so many past life regressions and I've come so far. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to do this if I hadn't done that work. But I'm so jealous that you did that one session and it was like, oh.
Well, I'm sure I have. Yeah, it really did help me a lot, actually. It just kind of just released the charge of the trauma of cellular memory.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what really kind of put me into wanting to help people with using the subconscious mind, because it's the divine mind. It has everything there. It's, outside of time and space. So when somebody will be in a session for 40 minutes and you ask them how long they were under, they'll say 10 minutes. They lose time,
You do lose time. Sometimes my sessions feel like they're 10 minutes and sometimes it feels like they're 3 hours. And sometimes we're supposed to do an hour session and like time flies by and I look down and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's been an hour and a half. I don't know about you, but I do not schedule people back to back for that reason, because there is this timelessness thing that happens when you go into those, into that space. Yeah. Totally. I think I went there before our conversation.
You were kind of just in an altered state.
It was an altered state. Yeah. Like a mad scientist writing things down. It was crazy. It was
That's
crazy.
good.
Crazy.
You're in the inspiration flow, because sometimes we're inspired and sometimes we, aren't in that flow. And so it feels good to be in that space.
It does feel good. It does feel good. And I think you and I share this also. I went on a walk this morning and I was getting all kinds of inspirations and things coming in. And it just fascinates me how when I move my body, I can tap into that space very quickly. And don't you take like bike rides and get things when you're out on your bike?
I'm not somebody that sits and meditates like that, I guess. So it's really interesting. The idea is to quiet the frontal lobe, the monkey mind, and turn that off so that you can get into that deeper space. But when I ride my bike is literally when I got the most profound, like the section in I'm not trying to keep talking about my book, but the emotional intelligence section came from a download from riding my bike and looking at a river. So it's like when I'm on a bike, my channel is completely open. It's pretty.
I think that's so important because I know I'm like that, and we've talked about it, and I have talked to many people that are like that. And I think so many of us have this idea that it's like, if I'm going to meditate, I have to go sit down, I have to cross my legs, and I have to put my hands a certain way, and I have to clear my mind. And I literally hate that kind of meditation.
Me too.
I hate to say that, but I do. It's just it doesn't get me to that space. Now, if I do go for a walk, or if I do some tapping and I think I need to discharge some of my denser energy or something, then I can go sit down and be open to that information and to that space. But I don't love to just go and sit and like get quiet.
No. Well, so like a lot of people are like that. And I use sound in my office. I love sound. It's profound. It's so healing. Cymatic frequencies is a study that your listeners can go look up. And that right there shows the power of sound, and we're 99% empty space. We look solid, but we're not. We're vibrating at different frequencies and giving us the illusion of being solid. And so the sound literally goes through your whole entire cellular system, bones. Yeah. And it helps to release a lot of that energy for you. So a lot of people who have a hard time meditating, as soon as I start playing the bowls, my harp, my monochord, or the crystal pyramids, it shuts it off, and they just go into that natural state super fast.
100%. That's my body. My system loves sound, and those crystal bowls, it's like just feeling that vibration. Oh, it is so relaxing. And I love those videos of them, like with the metal plate, and I think it's like sand that they put on it, and then they like strike I don't know what it looks like, a bow, like a bow.
They're showing different frequencies of sound and how it creates shapes on like with sand. So
and just like we were talking about earlier with Masaru Emoto, you can see in real time that these vibrations that through the sound are changing matter, and that's always happening at all times. And I'm so with you. I love the sound bath. I love a sound meditation. It just drops me into some place that I don't know, is very difficult to describe that feeling.
Yeah, well, the universe is made from sound, light, and frequency. So when people tap into their natural element, it's like it helps them to go into that deep space of remembrance. So Edgar Cayce said, I don't remember what year it was, but he was in one of his channels. He said that sound will be the future of medicine. And I really do believe that. My mom had passed from cancer, and she was towards the palliative care phase. I would do gong therapy on her. And this is a fascinating study that hopefully they're taking notes, because these are really good studies to go look at, because it'll expand your mind. And so they did a blood study. They took a blood study of before a gong bath and after a gong bath. So they took blood before, and then they did a gong bath on somebody for 20 minutes. So that's just the gong, just really just going all over.
Just a big metal plate kind of thing.
Yes, it's actually ancient, and it's the zero line. It will literally silence the mind just by hearing it. And so they did the study. So after the gong bath, they took a blood draw. So before, the blood was real sticky. The red blood cells the membranes kind of were torn and sticky and coagulated and
clumping together, weren't they?
Yes. And then after the gong bath, they did a blood study, and they drew the blood, and all the red blood cells membranes were solid, and they were flowing freely, not touching each other at all.
Oh my gosh. So
that right there is super profound. I mean, and also, the pyramids, there's a lot of study that shows that those were created and moved with sound and frequencies of advanced.
I've heard that. And I think that's completely possible. When you start learning about how vibrations move matter, it makes perfect sense to me that some technology might exist like that for sure. Yeah. So how did that affect your mom?
Well, so, towards the end of when people have cancer, it's just really hard for them to eat if they're on the treatments. She could barely move or anything. But after I would do those with her, she would be able to go walk around, and her emotional state would shift. It was like she was back in a normal vibration. But so it kind of gave her a temporary lift.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really fascinating to watch her be able to get up, actually, when she was basically, disintegrating. Her muscles were, at that point, but she would be able to have some peace and some fun again and get into a joy state. And so that was really fascinating. And my mom was not somebody who was a meditator or believed in any of this kind of thing.
Right.
And, but she's like that. She went into a trance state, and she's like, I saw myself riding a bike with your dad. And like, she was able to go into this inner place where my mom was very much an analytical, third dimensional focused person.
Mm-hmm.
And something that's fascinating is I've actually never paid for a reading in my life, but after my mom passed, she came through and she told the girl that was giving me this reading and said, sound is light. It is real. And to keep talking about it and sharing about it. Like, and that's just something my mom would never say in the,
yeah. But she got to the other side and she was like, oh, Chantelle is on it.
Yeah. And so, Jody, or I shouldn't say her name, but yeah, she actually had no idea it did sound. So it was just a really cool confirmation.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing, Chantelle. Oh, I love that. Yeah. And it just goes to show it's like, people will always ask me, well, it's just placebo, right? Like, we feel better because we think it will make us feel better. And that's true. That's always true. Right. And so we can't deny that. But there are these studies, if people, get curious about it, there are these studies, and it works far beyond placebo. It is real. It is powerful. These things are happening. Our mind is powerful. Sound is powerful, and it's our way of working with matter through connecting with the universe and just being a part of that and co-creating with it. But I think people get kind of like, they're like, oh, it's just, just woo woo. But
well, yeah. And I think it's okay that if they stay there, that's fine. But ultimately, everything that's manifested in the physical realm comes from the unseen realm first. And so, if you can understand the quantum physics, and it's not even that complicated when I say quantum physics, it's just realizing we're multidimensional beings operating in a field of light ultimately. And we only see a teeny tiny percentage of what's actually going on around us on the light scale. So,
yes. Okay. So I know what a multidimensional being is, but could you explain what that is? I think it's kind of a big concept, and I'm throwing it at you at the end of our conversation.
Okay.
But
well, just multidimensional, there's many layers to us. We're in this focus point here, but aspects of our consciousness are and is always on like the other side. And when people pass over to the other side, it's like your consciousness is still fully who you were here. You're just outside of the body. So multidimensional to me is just you're multi-layered. You're energetic, you're emotional, you're sexual, you're mental. All of that. Emotions is a huge gift for humans. I really don't know if there's any other species that have the ability to feel like we do.
yeah.
So multidimensional is just, we're far more than just what we see in the mirror. And, when you pass, you're not just the ashes that return to the ground.
Far more than just a meat body.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
So many different layers to us. Chantelle, do you have any, because we are on the Manifestation Lab, do you have any fun manifestation stories where you used your mind to create something or experience something that you could share?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. Let me just try to think.
I know you do.
I do.
I mean, we've actually already talked about a lot of them, but
yeah. Well, one, I'll just go with the flood because we talked about that earlier. So living in Louisiana, the poverty consciousness is very thick, and it's, a little bit lower income and things like that. And so what I really noticed was amplified through a flood. And so there was a wait list for getting cabinets. Okay. So it was like a 2-year wait list, and I'm outside and I'm like, grinding, getting our house back together. And my neighbor walks over and she's like, you're never going to get cabinets. It's 2 years out. And she was so adamant. She's like, it's just, I've already been everywhere. It's not going to happen, Chantelle. And I said, okay, watch this. And I didn't mean it. I didn't say this to her. In my mind, I'm like, well, I'm practicing everything I'm writing in the book too. And so I'm like, I don't think so. I'll make this happen somehow. And so I go to Home Depot for the 15,000th time I did rebuilding our house.
Oh my gosh.
And as soon as I pull into Home Depot, there's this lady getting out of her car, and she's putting a sign up, and she said, we just opened up a cabinet depot from New Orleans. And as soon as she put it there, I went right over there, and I was the first one in. I got the first order, and I got my cabinets literally 6 weeks later. And she was there for a year and didn't have hers.
It's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really cool. But
and it doesn't take long for this to show. Like once we start working with our energy and raising our vibration and bringing those, ditching some of the lower vibration stuff, that's all part of the human experience. We can experience that really quickly. I feel like I always tell people, I'm like, if you're skeptical, just practice it for like a week or two and things will start showing up.
Yeah. I'm going to share one more because this one, my husband was involved with this one, which is always great when somebody else who isn't, in the world that we're in all the time gets to experience it. So it was like, I think it was last Christmas or the Christmas before. I had got a really big tip from a client and I was like, that was so nice, but we're at a Mexican restaurant. And I just had the idea, I'm just going to pass this forward. So I slipped it in the check and I left. So there was this waitress and she was just working so hard. And I could just tell she just was a hard worker. And so I slipped it. Me and my husband were talking at the dinner. I'm like, I'm going to buy you these WeatherTech floor mats for your car. And they're very specific. It's like, it has to be the make, the model, the size, the year, and everything.
Yeah.
So I had just, tipped her. We didn't tell her. I just left it and we left and we pull into the house. We walk in and my son comes down the steps and he goes, hey, there was this lady that was just at the front door and she's brought these Mercedes-Benz C-Class, whatever the year. And she said, I thought you would want these. And I thought, oh my gosh, my husband's face was like, that's so crazily, undeniable right there.
Right. And it's not like you can just go buy those at Walmart, right? Like they're very specific for a very specific car.
Oh yeah, exactly. And who knocks on someone's door and says, hey, would you like some floor mats?
I love that story. And
the reason I shared the part about the money, giving it, is because when we remember that we're really one in nature, when I give to you, I'm giving back to myself ultimately. And I didn't do it with the intention of that. But when you're not in a tight, constricted, lack of abundance mind, that's when all that free flow stuff just starts coming and it gets fun.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that story. I love how specific it is. Yeah. And I think you are like truly a master manifester. So I love hearing these stories.
My favorite was,
I know, obviously they need to go get your book, Aligning with the Divine, because that is all about, getting tapped in and aligned so that you can, manifest these things that you want to see. Yeah. But what if somebody right now is like, okay, I'm interested. I want to start, upping my manifestation game. What would be your advice for that?
I would say you would purify your energy, your mind, and really purify and question your limiting beliefs. So going in, analyzing what your beliefs about money. So for example, if you have a belief that money doesn't grow on trees, I know we all heard that growing up, right?
Yeah.
But what if you flip the belief and you said, well, if I chop the tree down and I chop up firewood and I sell it, then money technically does grow on trees. And so learning to flip out of that little box that we were put in, that's where you got to start. And also just making sure your energy is clear, because if you have all those emotional little magnet chips of self-doubt and shame and guilt, you're not going to be a good manifester, because you're sending that, you're emitting that out on some subconscious energetic level. Purifying, and that would be where I would say start.
Yeah. So sound is purifying, tapping is purifying, exercise is purifying. Yes. Anything what else would you throw in? I mean, just healing work in general.
And eventually you should just come to a place where you're centered and, you're balanced and you're able to get knocked over, but you just always have that center. And so sometimes people get addicted to self-help.
Yeah.
And so, and by default, if we're always thinking something's broke, we're kind of co-manifesting that as well. But ultimately just being aware of, you're a spiritual being having a temporary human experience, but also questioning what you want to manifest, because some people think that they want to have a big $1 million house, and then that brings them no fulfillment whatsoever. And they have, they not manifested this, but in generally it really wasn't what would have served their soul. So questioning what you're manifesting and why you're manifesting it too.
Yeah. Like I always ask people, what is it that you truly want to feel when you have that thing, because that's what you need to work on first, is feeling that feeling first, finding a way to feel it right now. And then once you emit that vibration, then you can move towards it, and things will start coming towards you and showing up. Does that resonate?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And working with the emotion, like for manifestation, is huge, is building that energy of gratitude in your body. And, like you said, when you're emitting that energy out, you're building that connection to creating that and to bring it into your reality. And,
totally. And then to circle us all the way back to talking about the empaths, this is like everything, right? So it's like, if we're empaths and we are taking on, absorbing other people's negative energy, absorbing the negative energy of the world, and we don't have boundaries, and we have learned to shut down our emotional channel, right? Because if we're ultra sensitive and we learn I'm too sensitive, we start to hold that energy inside. This is extra important for these intuitive, sensitive types, right? To learn to just let the emotions flow through, have techniques or processes to let it flow, and then also recognize I need to have boundaries so that I do get inside of myself, connect, raise my energy, experience the good emotions so that I can manifest what I want, right? I don't want to just absorb and manifest more of that. That's not what I want.
It is a cycle too. It's like quicksand. You get pulled in, and it's kind of hard to get out unless you practice that.
For sure. And it is a practice. And I'm still guilty of falling back into it sometimes, but it does feel like it's like an up-leveled version. When I find myself doing it, I'm like, oh, look at me doing that thing, You
got a self-awareness now, and so you can shift it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think of myself as a nurse, and didn't really think of myself I didn't know I was an empath, but I didn't really think of myself as a healer, but I was just walking around very much just, oh, sure, I'll take that. And, just basking in a lot of stressful energy. And I had a shit ton of my own stress to deal with. And I was kind of a mess.
Yeah,
but it's a journey.
Are usually empaths, and so you guys are in that trauma, the energy, the pain, emotional discharge of just the patients too. It is a very dense place. I would love for hospitals to do a sound bath just to wash out.
Oh my gosh, so true. I was just thinking I would love to go through there with some sage and just smudge, but sound would be better for sure.
Yeah, because then you could get by with that at a hospital probably.
Oh my gosh, seriously. Yeah, you can't bring stinky old sage in there. There's no way that would fly. I had patients that would try to bring in even diffusers, and it was just, and I would want to have a diffuser there, but they get complaints from other patients, the smell was too strong, or from nurses or whatever, so it's a deal. Those hospitals.
You moved out of it. You're on your path though now. So
yep, I got out. All right, sister. Anything else you want to throw in here?
Maybe we should give them some ways that they can, what's important for empathic people is you were telling me earlier, you didn't feel grounded. Grounding barefoot on the electromagnetic field of the earth is really, really powerful for me, at least. If I'm super disconnected, it makes me feel crazy, especially in the winter.
Totally. Yeah.
That energy bath, salt baths, self-care, saying no.
I think some of the things that don't cost any money are the most powerful to clear that energy and get us back in our body. But yeah, grounding is fascinating. And there's been tons of studies rolling out with that too, just showing that the earth is negatively charged and that we absorb those negative ions and they act as antioxidants and make us feel better. And it's totally free.
Yeah, exactly.
Take our shoes off and just sit there and just soak it in. And then I think we also send, some of the stuff we don't want to carry back to the earth for recycling and it feels amazing. I don't know about you, but I have been craving nature. I just want to be outside like all the time right now. I'm sure that's part of my, intuitive side, just knowing that I need to get out in nature to get grounded. But,
Definitely.
when I get into creative zone, I feel very not in my body.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm very much up. I'm my Aries too, but I'm always heart and head up. So I've always had an issue feeling completely grounded in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is a space where it feels good, if I don't know, there's just times when it's like, I'm okay, not in my body. And then there's other times when it's like, there's a lot of physical anxiety that we're trying to dissociate from. And that's like a completely different experience. But yeah, when I'm in creative zone, I'm just like, even on my walk, which normally drops me right back in my body, I was just like up in the clouds and I'm like, all right, I guess this is what it's going to be today.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So Chantelle, thank you so much. How can people find you?
You can go on my website, chantellerenee.org.
Chantelle Renee.
Yep.
Chantelle Renee. And I talked about the Energy Enlightenment Tour with Brittany on the last podcast. Hopefully we can get that put together. Chantelle's a part of the Energy Enlightenment Tour event that we put on. And she's really like the head honcho of making sure that gets organized. Brittany and I like bow down to you. We're like, thank you, Chantelle, for keeping us in line. Your flighty air sign coworkers.
It works out. We're a good little balance, the three of us. So
yeah, we're a good balance. So hopefully we can get that on the schedule maybe in the fall. Because I know people are like fired up and excited and ready to get back to that event. It's so fun.
It is a fun day. It's nice to have 3 different kind of personalities and offerings too. And we're fast paced. So I definitely have people ask all the time when we're coming back. So
yeah, definitely. Do you have any other events coming up in the future?
I actually have an empath at an empowered empath workshop here in Springfield coming up, and
Springfield, Illinois.
Yep. And something else, a shamanic journey in Lincoln. I have an events page, and so I'm taking the summer off of events, but they'll start back up in the fall.
Okay, so your next events are in the fall, and you're just going to chill.
September. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. Proud of you, girl. Take some time off. Those events sound incredible. And I just thank you. I thank you for your book, for the work that you do in the world. I think you're amazing. I totally get this high vibe, like buzzy feeling every time I'm around you and we connect. I hope I'm not vamping you.
No.
Am I vamping you?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I hope not. But anyway, I love you, girl. Thank you so much.
I love you too. Thank you. Bye.
Mercury retrograde be damned. I made it through and you stuck around until the very end. I so appreciate you being a part of the Manny Lab pod. If you feel called and inspired, please share with friends and family if you feel like this is transformative information, if you feel like it can help them. And if you feel called to, please consider leaving a 5-star review or maybe even dropping a comment so that people can find this podcast and it can inspire them. Thanks, friends.